Well, the wait is finally open. Camp Snoopy at Kings Island has an opening date. It's May 24th. Hello, alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about. The day is finally announced, Don. Are you excited?
I'm excited about it. I've had a chance to, look through the fence like thousands of other guests have done and check out the construction area of it. And it's starting to more resemble what you see in the rendering here. Each of my visits that I've had at the park this year, it's kind of fun to watch the parents with the young kids, standing there talking about it, seeing the roller coaster, the new ride there, Snoopy Soapbox Racers. It's gone through a series of test runs a couple of times when I've been there. That garners a lot of attention. So, that wait is almost over.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it, and I'm glad that it's making its debut before, let's say, the core season. I realize the park went daily today as of this recording, but the reality is the summer season kind of starts on Memorial Day. Would you agree? I mean,
That's when everybody, that it's the unofficial start of summer, Memorial Day. And there was a time that the park wasn't even open daily until Memorial Day weekend. You just had your weekend operation. There were times that all the shows would open up Memorial Day. So yeah, that's about the right timing. Now I know that there was, when they said late spring, that could have taken it into June, up to mid June, and there was a lot of people speculating, if it would take that long, or they would look at the construction over the first couple of weekends and thought, no chance this thing opens by Memorial Day. But as I looked at it, and I saw what needed to be done, and just having worked at the park for 17 seasons and seeing a lot of construction, uh, you know, areas, whether it was Mystic Timbers, Banshee, Diamondback, and what it looked like maybe a week to 10 days before it opened, and you're thinking no chance, but that date comes along, and everything looks great.
yeah, I actually, it's funny because what comes to mind is different times when, like for, let's say 2009 when Diamondback opened, you had me out at the park several days leading up to opening day for construction and this and that, when I was running KI Central. And I remember the park was a disaster before opening day. And then you show up for, okay, before media day, since it was a unique situation. But as soon as guests, the outside is in, it's a completely different place. They perform some actual magic in the night hours leading up. I can't imagine what it's like that night before the park opens. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, and I was there this past weekend. So I was there on Friday and came back on Sunday, and just between those dates, just how much progress had been made. So at that point in time, I started thinking, okay, it's probably going to be Memorial Day weekend, because it looks like things are really starting to take shape here, and there's still a lot of work to be done on Pigpen's mess hall. But the playground equipment had been delivered, and was sitting there, and it's just a lot of. It doesn't take long to pour the concrete and everything, for that area, to go over the dirt, which is kind of all over the place there. But it is, it's going to be spectacular. We've said this before on the podcast. As good as the kids area at Kings Island has been, and it's been a good one. It won the Golden Ticket Award by Amusement Today for 18 consecutive years from 2001 through 2018. It's never going to have been better than it's going to be this year after Camp Snoopy opens.
I couldn't agree more. And I've said it a million times, that area of Planet Snoopy really needs the hug. Yeah, I really enjoy the merchandise. And so I wish I had a photo to put out for this, but the merchandise they've had of Snoopy and like a bucket hat and stuff like that has been fantastic. And I was telling the girlfriend, I really wish we had just gotten Camp Snoopy from the beginning, because Planet Snoopy had nothing. It was never like space themed necessarily or anything like that. But Camp Snoopy's got a concise theme, so there's a huge direction they can go with that all fits in with it. But that's super exciting. But that's
And it
not all that's
transitions
going on.
well. It transitions well, too, when you walk in from the Rivertown area and you've got the
Mhm.
sign now that says Camp Snoopy. Now I want to talk about the signage too. I mean, I think it all looks spectacular. From the entrance sign to some of the things calling out the Pigpen's Mess Hall or the soapbox race. The signage all looks great. So it really transitions well going into that area of the park, and it works the other way for coming into the Plant Snoopy area, where that part, there's that separation. But I think between the two, it kind of blends together really well. They've done a nice job with that.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, this is going to be the best the kids area's looked at least since it became Peanuts, and that's going to be. There's been a lot of upgrades and renovations and changes, but this is going to be rather impressive. Um, but there's more going on that weekend. That's Memorial Day weekend. Uh,
It is, yes. We got
yeah,
Soak City Water Park opening, and this year's a big deal for Soak City. It's the 35th anniversary. It hasn't been named that, for all of its years, starting out as Waterworks back in 1989, and then having, the other, you know, name in there with Boomerang Bay. But the premier water park in the region, and 35 years. That's a long time.
it is. I remember when they added. I was really little, but I do remember it. Now, particularly for that weekend, members of the military can get in for free with their active military ID from the 24th through the 27th. So visit kingsisland.com for the terms and conditions on that. But I want to make sure that that was communicated. But also, two different shows open. Well, two different shows in the conventional sense opening. You've got Country Crossroads and Retrospect opening on the 25th.
Yeah, and what I like about the country show is it has a live band. We've had the country shows in the Fest House that have not had the live band. It really adds a lot, whether it's a pop show or country show, when you do have that live band with it.
Yeah, and then Retrospect is probably essentially a new show, but they've had the name Retrospect for a while, where they sing, today's top hits. That's on the bandstand. We've discussed this at length. The bandstand in the evening, once the sun goes down, is one of the best venues in the park because the energy is incredible. It draws in people. They have some of the better performers on that show because it probably has the most exposure of all the different shows. But that's really exciting. But the thing I'm most excited for, Don, the new firework and drone show, Under the Stars.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I think that's something that once that debuts, and we've got some footage and some photos. We'll do an episode just on that. What's involved in putting that together. But really looking forward to that.
Yeah. So I want to spend a little bit of time speculating with that because for those of you who were familiar with it, they had the spotlights that were on those totems, like the vertical trusses along the fountain. They had those for years. Well, they have them. They reinstalled them, but they're like catty corner to where they are now. So I'm wondering what direction they're going to go with it. My guess is that they're going to do a lot of projections of like stars and speckles on the buildings from there to follow the Under the Stars theme. But that's just my guess. So I'm as curious as anybody else, but I do love me a good night show. So I'm super stoked about that.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's a great way to cap off an evening at the park in the summer.
Yeah, cool. All right. So let's move on to the first listener question. The first one's from Joseph R. He says, what is your guys' fondest memories of the park in earlier days? And how do you compare the park then until now? That's a great question. Don, you got a much longer history with the park than I do. So why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, I date back to year one in 1972, which means I'm old. But my fondest memory, would be that first time walking into the park. You can't, the way the front gate is constructed, you can't see anything until you walk in. But, the Royal Fountain, International Street, you had the Eiffel Towers, the backdrop, the sky ride going across the front of the tower with the different colored gondolas, the red, the yellow, the green, the blue. I mean, it was, it felt like it stepped into a different world. But a couple of the other fondest memories of those earlier years, in the 70s and into the mid 80s was the uniforms. the theming. So if you were in Oktoberfest, the associates wore the German, outfits. If you were in Rivertown, you had that kind of a look. They would wear uh, jeans and the shirt that looked, that fit that. Coney Mall, you had the Coney Mall look with the pinstripe shirts, the blue pants. Um, Depending on where you were on International Street, you had the Swiss shop, the German shop, the different ones there. So I think that part of it was an early memory of just the different, uniforms throughout the park that you saw. And it really kind of helped sell that theme. And then that kind of went away, mid to late 80s, where everything became a little more consistent across the board, where they had the blue shorts, the white shirt, everybody kind of looked the same for the most part. What about you,
Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah, you had me harken back to my first visit, which was, I believe, in 1992 or 1991. I got to pin down that date, but we were always an Americana slash the Swartsville Lake family. And my aunt took me and my sister to the park. And that was our first ever visit. It was on a Friday. And I distinctly remember so my aunt, she actually passed away in 2020, not from COVID, she had history of medical problems, but um she had like a mental disability where she didn't work. She was a registered nurse like before I was born, and then like she didn't work after that. She had like a breakdown, or it's irrelevant to the story. Nonetheless, I remember her asking before her birthday for money for her birthday because she wanted to buy like a work of art. And I remember thinking that was weird. And then she revealed on her birthday that she was going to take the money to take us to the park. So she took us to the park. Our first visit there was with her. And yeah, I mean, walking in and seeing the Eiffel Tower, actually seeing the Eiffel Tower driving up from the south was pretty majestic, because to me as a little kid, I thought it was like just another water tower, and my sister and her were, there it is, the Eiffel Tower, and so on. So that was really cool. And then, I had my first ever Kings Island ride, which was Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And it just, so much of this stuff is stuff I remember. Like I remember for lunch, we ate La Rosa's at Rivertown La Rosa's on that little patio to, like, if you're staring at the building on the left side of it, and seeing people ride the Vortex. And I remember my sister and I openly discussing that anybody that would ride that has to be clinically insane. Like there's just a lot of crazy people at the park that would ride a ride like that. So that's like some of my earliest fond memories. And maybe that's kind of what sparked my love for the park moving forward, because it was always so special that one day a year that we got to go. But there are a lot of times, I ran KI Central for a long time. So I had a ton of fun with that. And you and I did a bunch of cool different things. And I would say that I've said this before, I'll say it again, it stands true. Robbie Knievel Day, my favorite day of the park ever. Second favorite day at the park was probably my first ever event, which was Beast Buzz. And I remember ever since I went to Beast Buzz, I remember thinking, man, if KIC could have an event, like it would be so cool. And we made that happen. You and I made that happen together. It was one of the first things you did when you came in,
We did. We did.
So I remember the stress involved with that. I remember when we were working on it, but we hadn't announced it yet. We hadn't hammered out all the details, and having a dream that we assumed a ton of people were going to be there. So we booked the Timberwolf for the guest speakers, and it was like 8 people in the front row. But the KIC day, it sold out in about 3 days, and it was very successful. And we did it again a couple different times. And yeah, that's some of my fondest memories.
Yeah, the thing about it too, for me, I mean, it just felt so magical in 1972, and here it is. For me, we're in season 53 that I've been around the park, visiting the park, and that magic is still there. When I walk in, I've never lost that feeling. Even though things have changed, the look has changed. A lot of the attractions that I grew up with are gone. It still has that magic to it.
Yeah, and what's kind of funny is that I still, knowing, I'm a little, like, I got my fingers in the industry a little bit more than the average person, but I still mentally think that the stuff that's at the park either comes from nowhere or it's like special for theme parks or for Kings Island itself. So if I see, you know, a bench or something like that at Home Depot that I recognize from the park, I'm like, no way, that's where they got that, you know? So, you know, being exposed to the park a lot definitely kind of diminishes the novelty of it. But I think that they'll, you know, capturing
Yeah,
the
for me,
magic.
it's never. I've never lost that novelty feeling to it. Like I said, it's always felt magical, and I can say, with 100% honesty that the day that comes that it doesn't feel magical, it doesn't feel fun and thrilling, and I'm not having as much fun as I did on my first visit in 1972. That's the day I won't go anymore. So
Yeah.
people would always ask me, the years I was riding the racer all the time, when are you going to stop? Well, why would I stop? Well, it's still fun, right? So I've never lost that feeling with it. Um, now I don't go into Home Depot, so I probably haven't seen anything that's around the park like you have. I don't get out much. I go to Kings Island. I go to other amusement theme parks. I go to ball games and hockey games and football games, and that's kind of Bucky's kind of my life. So I don't go into these other stores like you do. So hopefully now I won't for sure. So I don't lose that magical touch.
Yeah, don't go to Lowe's. They don't buy anything from Lowe's if you want to keep it safe.
That could
All
work.
right.
What's next?
All right. So Craig Carroll from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Great hockey town, by the way. Kings Island announced the video they're going to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at Pigpen's Mess Hall when it opens. Do you think that will have a longer shelf life than the double patty chicken sandwich at the brew house? The double patty chicken sandwich at the brew house was a stillborn. Like, it never lived.
Just stop. Just stop. I mean, we explained it a couple episodes ago what the situation was there with that. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about the double.
But it does raise the question of, we understand the situation about the chicken sandwich. They had their concerns. They decided to go forward with it. It turns out the kitchen was overwhelmed or whatever. But there's nothing stopping that from happening again. So I guess the advice that we would have is, if you really want to try this, try it on the first day, because day 2 may be gone. Hell, don't even wait till 7. That's what the mistake we made.
As long as I guess it's the cheddar wurst that has the mustard and the bacon on it, as long as that is available, I'm going to be happy and content. That looks delicious.
Absolutely. Okay, great question. All right. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.